He walked into the dealership with nothing more than hope and a dream. But instead of being welcomed, he was met with cold stares, raised voices, and a manager determined to humiliate him. In that moment, he wasn't seen as a customer. He was seen as a threat. Security was called, and all eyes watched as he was treated like he didn't belong. What no one knew was that the man they were pushing out held a truth powerful enough to shatter their arrogance. When the mask of prejudice finally falls, who will be left standing in shame?
Darius had always believed in hard work and perseverance. Growing up, he faced challenges most people could never imagine, yet he never allowed them to define his worth. Every morning, he dressed simply: jeans, a hoodie, and the same quiet confidence that carried him through life. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, but behind his calm demeanor was a man who had built something extraordinary. For years, Darius had poured his time, energy, and savings into building his dream, a chance to change how people were treated in spaces that often judged them by their appearance. Cars had always been his passion, and owning a dealership wasn't just about selling vehicles, it was about creating opportunities for others who were often overlooked. On this day, he walked into the very showroom he had worked so hard to acquire. To him, it was more than just a building filled with shiny cars. It was a symbol of resilience, sacrifice, and victory against the odds. Yet as he stepped inside, the atmosphere quickly shifted. Glances turned sharp, whispers followed him, and the warmth he expected never came. What Darius didn't know was that before his ownership was revealed, he would be tested in ways that cut deeper than any business deal could ever be.
The moment Darius stepped inside, the change in the room was impossible to ignore. Conversations halted, eyes followed him, and the air grew heavier with silent judgment. He walked past rows of polished cars, each gleaming under showroom lights. But it wasn't the vehicles catching attention, it was him. The employees whispered, their glances sharp like he was trespassing in a place he didn't belong. A salesman, tall and stiff, blocked his path with a forced smile. "Can I help you?" he asked, though his tone felt more like a challenge than an offer. Darius calmly explained he was there to look around, but the man's expression hardened as if doubting his words. Instead of offering a brochure or greeting him with enthusiasm, the salesman gestured toward the exit, muttering something about serious buyers only. Darius ignored the slight and continued, determined not to let prejudice break his composure. But the tension only grew. Two security guards appeared from the side doors, their posture rigid, eyes fixed on him like he was a threat. Their presence sent a clear message: he wasn't welcome. Then came the manager. A woman in a sharp blue suit stormed across the floor, her heels clicking against the polished tiles. Her face was set with indignation, her voice sharp as she demanded to know what he was doing there. She didn't ask politely, she accused, her words dripping with authority and disdain. Around them, the showroom transformed into a stage. Employees pretended to busy themselves, but their ears were tuned to every word. Customers glanced uneasily, some whispering, some smirking. Darius stood in the middle of it all, his chest tightening with each passing second. He hadn't come here to fight, but their treatment cut deeper than words could show. The manager's voice rose, echoing through the room. She accused him of wasting time, of being in the wrong place, even hinted that he might be trying to cause trouble. Each accusation stabbed at his dignity, stripping him of the respect he had rightfully earned. Still, he stood firm, calm on the outside, though inside a storm raged. As she motioned for the guards to escort him out, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Darius knew this was no longer just about him. It was about every insult, every stereotype, every time someone was reduced to their skin color instead of their humanity. And in that moment, with the world watching, the truth he carried inside threatened to break free. But how long could he stay silent before revealing who he truly was?
The guards closed in, their shadows stretching across the showroom floor. Customers shifted uncomfortably, some pretending to browse cars while secretly watching every second. The manager's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Escort him out, now!" The humiliation pressed on Darius like a weight. Every step the guards took toward him wasn't just about this moment. It was every time someone like him was told they didn't belong. Every time worth was measured by color instead of character. For a brief second, his chest burned with anger, his fists clenched at his sides. But he didn't lash out. He stood tall. The guards reached for him, their hands brushing his shoulders, ready to shove him out the door. Gasps rippled through the room, some from shock, others from satisfaction. Darius could hear the muffled whispers. "Figures, he's trouble. Knew he didn't belong here." But then he spoke. Calm, steady, unshaken. His words froze the room. "Before you put your hands on me, maybe you should check who owns this dealership." Silence crashed down. The guards paused, uncertain. The manager's smug confidence faltered, her fingers still raised in accusation. She let out a sharp laugh, dismissive, until Darius reached into his pocket and pulled out a small set of keys. Keys not to a car, but to the very office behind her. The air shifted. Whispers turned into stunned murmurs. Faces that had been filled with judgment now showed disbelief. The manager's color drained, her voice caught in her throat. And in that charged silence, one undeniable truth hung heavy in the air. The man they had tried to throw out was the very man in charge of them all. What would happen next? An apology? A collapse of arrogance? Or something even more explosive was about to change everything.
The room was still, the weight of silence pressing on every corner of the dealership. All the arrogance, all the judgment that had been thrown at Darius dissolved the moment truth hit the air. The manager lowered her hands slowly, her expression frozen between shock and shame. The guards stepped back, no longer sure of their authority. And for the first time since he walked in, Darius no longer felt like an intruder. He stood as the rightful owner, reclaiming the dignity they had tried to strip away. But he didn't raise his voice. He didn't lash out. Instead, he simply looked around the room, letting the power of the truth speak louder than any words could. The same people who had whispered, laughed, and stared now avoided his eyes. Their silence was an admission, an unspoken apology none of them had the courage to give. The manager tried to stammer out an excuse, her voice trembling, but the damage was already done. Her arrogance, built on prejudice, had crumbled in front of everyone. What she thought was a show of power had turned into her deepest humiliation. And yet, in that moment, Darius chose not revenge, but restraint. He understood that dignity doesn't come from tearing others down. It comes from standing tall when others try to break you. As the truth spread, the lesson became impossible to ignore. Those who judged him by his hoodie, by his skin, by assumptions carved from centuries of bias, had been forced to face their ignorance. And while Darius walked away with his head high, the image of that day stayed with everyone in the room. It was no longer just about one man. It was about the mirror of racism reflecting back at them, exposing a truth they could never again deny.
This story isn't only about Darius. It's about countless moments, every day, when people are dismissed, disrespected, or mistreated simply because of how they look. It is about a society that still struggles to see past prejudice, and the silent battles fought in boardrooms, classrooms, and streets. Racism doesn't always come with slurs shouted across the street. Sometimes it comes dressed in a suit, masked as authority, hidden in assumptions. And each time, it robs dignity not just from its victim, but from the humanity of those who practice it. So the question remains, how many more moments like this will it take before we finally learn? How many lives must be bruised by ignorance before respect becomes the standard, not the exception? We are left with a choice. Stay silent and let prejudice shape our future, or speak, act, and stand against it until justice is no longer a twist in the story, but the story itself.